Okay, people, steady on the set.
Ready, camera one. Betty's cue in 3, 2, take one.
Hi, I'm Betty Hollister, Public Information Manager with the Regional Flood Control District, and you're watching the Flood Channel.
And we're clear. Great job, Betty.
Thank you. Wow, it's really overwhelming how much time, planning, and coordination that goes into the production of a television show. From the writer, the editor, the producer, to the lighting, audio, and cameramen, and everything in between. We all must be on the same page to complete the show, which in this case is the Flood Channel program you're about to watch.
Ready, two, and take two. Two, you're hot. One, stand by.
So the process is much the same with the district, but instead of the final product being a television program, instead it's the construction of flood control projects that protect our community from flooding. So just as we'll see the inner workings of the Flood Channel show, we thought it would be interesting to give you at home a behind-the-scenes look at the district. First, we'll track a project from start to finish, showing the planning, coordination, and time that goes into each flood control project. Then we'll take a look at some of the environmental concerns that are addressed before a flood control project can be built. From there, we'll head to Lake Mead to see how much you know about water quality. And finally, we'll take a step back in time to see ancient artifacts that have been discovered during the excavation of detention basins and flood control channels. All that, our Flood 101 and Pollution Solution segments, coming up on this special behind-the-scenes edition of the Flood Channel.
Take one, hold shot on Betty, ready VTR, and roll intro. And we're coming back to Betty on camera one, and 3, 2, camera one, you're hot.
Welcome back to the Flood Channel. At the beginning of a television program, the production team usually sits down to discuss ideas for the show. It's called a production meeting. The district shares a similar approach when designing and building flood control projects. Carrie Ann brings us a story.
Every flood control project has a beginning and an end. The project begins when it's included on the district's master plan, which means that it's vital to control flooding. The project ends when construction is complete. So as you can imagine, it can take a lot of time and can get fairly complicated. So let's go through it step by step.
Just like you wouldn't start a trip across the U.S. without a map, we need a map of where we're going to build flood control projects. And so that's our master plan. That's our map of what we need to do to protect this community and all the residents within Clark County. So it's our map of where the flood channels are going to be, where the storm drains are going to be, where the detention basins are going to be located, and that's what we put together. The plan is updated every 5 years per state law, and it's very prudent for us to do that as fast as we're growing here in the Southwest. What we look at when we update the plan is what's been completed, what's been proposed in the previous plan to see if that still is the most economical way to provide flood protection to this community. We look at changes in land use and land densities. So we look at a completely new canvas, if you will. And what I'm looking at right now is just the Las Vegas Valley Master Plan. We have similar documents for Mesquite, Laughlin, the outlying areas, Moapa Valley, all the areas that we serve. But this is the Las Vegas Valley, and what this red line represents is our ultimate development boundary that we're assuming, which is outside of the BLM disposal boundary, because we assume at some point that boundary is going to change and that these will be rooftops and pavement out here and that flood control facilities are needed. Our plan then becomes the foundation for everything else we do. Our plan is the foundation to develop a construction program from. We are implementing the plan by building projects that protect life and property. Without a plan, it'd be a piecemeal type of construction program, and so the plan shows us what pieces to build as they connect to each other to protect the community. It's typically about a 3-year process. First we have the plan that identifies the facility and where it should be located. From there it goes into pre-design and design, and then real estate acquisition, environmental permitting, production of plans and specifications, awarding the contract to a contractor, and the actual construction of that project. And it's the construction of the project that protects another part of the valley or another part of the area we serve within Clark County that begins to provide the reduction in flood flows.
Well, basically, a project's identified on our master plan as being necessary to, provide protection from flooding, and it gets identified on our priority list on our 10-year plan. And in the first year or two of the 10-year plan, those projects are moving into what we call a final design stage. We start that off by doing what we call an alternatives analysis for each facility that we're going to design. And so, the alternatives analysis, we start looking at the hydrology, how much flow are we dealing with this facility. We look at the hydraulics, how we're going to get that flow through the facility. And we look at different types of facilities to see if we're going to do an open channel, or we're going to do a box culvert. Are we going to, if it's a detention basin, what kind of spillways are we going to use on the detention basin, things of that nature. And we'll look at that as far as cost effectiveness. We'll do a preliminary cost estimates on each one of those alternatives. We'll figure out which facility is the most efficient to carry the flow. We hire an outside consultant, an engineer, and we work with that engineer and we work with the entities to, throughout the design process, which starts with the alternatives analysis. We look at all of the different alternatives for that facility. We review it. We figure out which facility is the most hydraulically efficient and the most cost-effective facility for our purposes, and then we make a final decision on that. And then we move forward into final design. As far as our projects go, they're strictly flood control projects. And so we've been reviewing these projects. We've been working with these projects since the inception of the Regional Flood Control District. And so we have a lot of knowledge about flood control. We have a firm understanding of how to calculate the flow rate, how to model the flows through the system, and we can offer that advice to the consultants and to the entities and give them our opinion on what's the most cost-effective and most hydraulically efficient section to build.
Securing right-of-way seems like an easy question to answer, but it can be very challenging and difficult. Right-of-way is the area of land in which we put facilities, and in this case flood control facilities, channels or pipes, storm drains and that type of stuff. And we need an area to accomplish that. The legislature and the commission and every entity in this town has been looking at eminent domain and really making sure they have good, solid, strong policies about when and how you can use eminent domain. For a government to take private property and hand it over to someone else for private use is absolutely wrong. In the case of taking private property when there's no other way to obtain it and use it for public use, that's extremely difficult, but it still, in a lot of cases, needs to happen. And we wouldn't have roads, we wouldn't have these facilities, flood control facilities, flood channels, storm drains, and so on, if we have to have routes for those. So unfortunately, that does come, but we do everything we can to prevent it. Every dollar we take comes from someone's pocket, and we ought to be able to stretch that as far as possible, get the best use out of it, not do something just because someone wants to. There should be a good purpose for it. So I keep my eye on that, and I have to tell you the Flood Control District has done a tremendous job. They stretch dollars a little further than I thought dollars could be stretched, and they keep pace, which is incredible. When you think about how many people, 65, 70,000 people, that's a city, move into this valley every year for the last 15, 18 years, 9 people a minute or however that works out, it's incredible. And to think that we can keep up with that in the flood control aspects is a daunting thought, but they do a tremendous job, and everybody who is associated with it does a tremendous job.
All of our projects need to comply with all environmental laws. That includes the National Environmental Policy Act, Clean Water Act, Endangered Species Act, Clean Air Act, and a variety of others. What we do in the Las Vegas Valley, all of our projects are covered by a programmatic environmental impact statement that covers the entire program of flood control facilities in the valley, including Boulder City. Then for any specific project, there's a procedure that's laid out where we answer a certain set of questions to see what the impacts of a particular project at a particular location are. There's rarely, if ever, a case where we can't build a project. What we have to do is mitigate for the impacts of our project. If, for example, there's waters of the U.S. impacted, we typically have to mitigate by contributing funds to either an in lieu fee program, which we have done in the past, provide funding to a program that creates wetlands to offset the impacts to the waters of the U.S. that we're impacting. If there are endangered species involved, for example, the desert tortoise, we have to go out and clear the site of tortoises, fence it, and monitor it so that tortoises can't come into the site. Take those tortoises over to the Desert Tortoise Conservation Center, and then pay a fee to mitigate for the loss of the habitat. The preferable approach for mitigation is avoidance, avoid the impacts if at all possible, minimize those impacts, do as little as possible, and if you can't do any of those, compensate. We have relocated plants, gathered seeds, redistributed them, done some scientific research, but none of our projects have come to a complete halt because of any of the impacts. Typically, we try to avoid, we do minimize, and most often we mitigate.
The Board of Directors meetings oftentimes will have a dozen items and it will take 10 minutes to approve and move on. And yet, if that 10 minutes of board action, underneath that is probably 18 months to 2 years of hard work. And the way the flood control has been set up has been extremely successful. We certainly have a technical advisory committee that reflects the board membership. It has the public works engineers from the respective agencies. They are the ones that get into the detail. They then make recommendations to a citizens advisory committee. So that public voice, critically important. So the tech committee goes to the citizen advisory committee, gets their input and hopefully approval. That is then sent to the board of directors as a final recommendation. And that recommendation, usually we accept the presentation from the technical advisory committee or the representative, and then approve the funding, approve the contracts to be signed. So everybody enjoys seeing that completion, but truly, these processes from start to finish can be upwards of 2.5 to 3 years. We've been blessed as far as a public agency, because not only do we have outstanding board members, great representation from Southern Nevada at the elected level, but we have one of the finest staffs for a public agency. Gail Frazier, Kevin Eubanks, on and on over there. They, although we don't hear from them or see them too much, they are the foundation of which we've built this great agency and will continue to do so. There's some employees over at the Flood District that have been there since day one, and that institutional knowledge can't be replaced. They know where we started from, and they see and share the vision of the board where we have to get to. So I see this continuum, maybe new elected voices coming on the board, but dedicated professionals at the Flood District and the member agencies that are committed to making our project successful.
It's important that everybody realizes that our service area is the entire Clark County. Our projects begin in Laughlin, which is about 90 miles south of Las Vegas, all the way up to Mesquite, which is 90 miles north of Las Vegas. So we are planning and constructing and implementing projects to protect all of the residents within Clark County. I think it's important to recognize that the projects, once completed, are sized for a 100-year flood event, which is has a 1% chance of being equaled in any given year. And it will handle all flood events up to and including the 100-year event. And probably the most important thing is that they're here for generations to come. It's a major investment in building these projects, and we're also investing in the continued operation and maintenance of these projects.
So there you have it, a step-by-step look at how the district takes a project from start to finish, giving another area greater flood protection. Now, as they say in television, that's a wrap, Betty.
Yes, it is, Carrie Ann, and we'll be back with more on the Flood Channel after this.
Camera 1, hold your medium shot, and we're clear. Roll PSA.
Springtime, when thoughts turn to Cleaning? Hey, it's great you want to clean out your garage. Just be careful where you dispose of things like old paint, batteries, pesticides, weed killer, and other potentially dangerous chemicals. Many things can be left out on recycling day. However, dangerous pollutants must go to a recycling center for proper disposal. Never dump into a storm drain. It may end up polluting Lake Mead, our primary source of drinking water. Learn more at lvstormwater.com. Brought to you by the Clark County Regional Flood Control District.
Hi, I'm Tyler, photojournalist and editor with Hunter Productions, and you're watching the Flood Channel.
Ready, camera one, and we're back to Betty in 3, 2, cue Betty.
As we saw in Carrie Ann's segment, we faced some challenges coordinating all the steps necessary to bring a project to completion. It's an important process where cooperation among government agencies like the Bureau of Land Management and the Environmental Protection Agency all work together to help protect you, your family, and of course our precious environment.
Some of the hurdles we face environmentally at the Regional Flood Control District involve informing the community about what they can do to help in the environment, but also in a regulatory sense, we have to coordinate the efforts of the cities and the county in the Las Vegas Valley, along with our regulating agencies, the state of Nevada and the federal EPA. The agencies in the valley that we work with include North Las Vegas, Henderson, and Clark County.
Fish and Wildlife, of course, is charged by the federal government with managing the fish and the wildlife of the United States, migratory birds, endangered fish species, etc. That is their job as mandated by Congress, and they take it very seriously. Corps of Engineers deals with navigable waters of the U.S. The Virgin River is a navigable water, and so they have control over that, and we have to work with them in terms of doing improvements, and they, of course, have to work with Fish and Wildlife, too. And then the BLM basically owns the land. So as the property owner, we have to deal with them also. It's a rather complex mesh, not something we always enjoy, but they're actually good people to work with.
Protecting the environment and addressing the impacts associated with the construction, operation, and maintenance of master plan flood control facilities is another example of the district's commitment to protect our community from the devastation of floods. And we'll be back with more on the Flood Channel after this.
At a time when Southern Nevada needs to be water smart, did you know taking your car to a car wash saves not only gallons of water, but also traps all that dirt and other nasty pollutants? Washing your car in the driveway allows grease, soap, and oil to flow down the street into storm drains and onto Lake Mead, our primary source for drinking water. Do your part. Wash smart. A clean car and a cleaner environment. This message brought to you by the Stormwater Quality Management Committee, a program of the Regional Flood Control District.
Hi, I'm Al, Technical Director with Hunter Productions, and you're watching the Flood Channel.
What are some of the things I can do to protect the environment?
The first thing you can do to find out what you can do to help protect our environment is go to our website at regionalflood.org or lvstormwater.com. There's good information there that will help you find out how you can take part. In general, never put anything down the storm drain but stormwater or clean water, and that would include things like trash, chemicals, oil. Never put those things down the drain. If you see a clogged storm drain, please call us at the Regional Flood Control District to report that. That'll help us clean the storm drains when we need to, so we can keep them open for flood events, and then also keeps that trash out of the environment. And on windy days, don't put your trash out unless it's secured. Try to put it out as close to your trash pickup time as possible. We don't want that wind to blow the trash into our stormwater system.
Okay, stand by, and ready, camera one, and we're back to Betty on 3, 2, cue Betty.
You've all seen public service announcements and news segments here on the Flood Channel about the importance of the proper use and disposal of lawn fertilizers and chemicals, keeping storm drains and washes free of litter and debris, and being a responsible pet owner. These kinds of pollutants can make their way untreated to Lake Mead, our primary source of drinking water. Eric takes an inside look at water quality with this report from Lake Mead.
Well, I'm out here at Lake Mead Cruises aboard the beautiful Desert Princess. And here's something I bet you didn't know. Last year, over 8 million visitors, that's twice as many as the Grand Canyon, Yellowstone, and Yosemite, visited beautiful Lake Mead. Providing recreational opportunities to the residents of the valley and tourists alike is a primary component to this 1.5 million acre facility. The importance of water testing to maintain the highest quality of water is something the district as well as other agencies take very seriously.
Water flows to the Las Vegas Wash from the Las Vegas Valley, and it comes from over-irrigation, surface and groundwater, and it comes from stormwater. And so all of this water flows into Lake Mead through the Las Vegas Wash and becomes a source water for SNWA in delivering water to your home. So it's very important to us to know what's in the water that comes off of the Las Vegas Valley. So we sample during dry weather events, that would be for the over-irrigation and the surface and groundwater, and also during storm events when it rains. And so we take that information and the lab results from those samples to help us understand what's flowing into our source of drinking water.
Well, one of the primary things that we do is bacteriological analyses, because the bacteriological quality of the water is what really helps us make sure that people don't get immediately sick. The kinds of chemical analysis we do are for minerals in the water like calcium and magnesium, which a lot of people have heard of. We also do work on metals, things like lead and copper and arsenic. We also look at pesticides. And then the filtration allows us to get out particles, although we don't have a very high particle raw water, but it still allows us to make the water very particle free. There are minimum requirements for what we have to do according to the Safe Drinking Water Act. We have always made a choice to go beyond the minimum requirements in terms of how many samples we collect, often how frequently we collect those samples. We feel that that's critical for us as prudent operators of a drinking water system, and also as being servants to the public and ensuring that that the water served in the valley always meets Safe Drinking Water Act standards.
Well, we've given you a behind-the-scenes look at water testing and explained to you just why this beautiful recreational area needs to be protected. Now I think I'm going to enjoy a leisurely cruise on our beautiful high desert lake. Back to you in the studio, Betty.
Thanks, Eric. Have fun and be safe. We'll be back with more on the Flood Channel after this.
Ah, a beautiful green lawn. You crave it. You want it. So you fertilize and you water and 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 you fertilize and you water. But did you ever stop to think all those chemicals and all that water can run off your lawn, down the storm drain, and straight into Lake Mead, our primary source for drinking water? Water smart and follow guidelines for fertilizing your lawn. You'll protect our environment and it can save you money. This message has been brought to you by the Stormwater Quality Management Committee, a program of the Regional Flood Control District.
Hi, I'm Roxanne, producer with Hunter Productions, and you're watching the Flood Channel.
How can I learn more about the history of flooding in southern Nevada?
Log on to the district's website at regionalflood.org and click on the homepage link History of Flooding. You'll find information dating back to the early 1900s, as well as rainfall event reports from more recent storms.
Ready, camera one, and we're back to Betty in 3, 2, cue Betty.
So far, we've given you at home a behind-the-scenes look at the Flood Channel and the district to show how projects go from start to finish. Sometimes during the excavation phase of a project, we unearth ancient artifacts and fossils. Carrie Ann digs deeper on a story that's literally thousands of years old.
Thousands of years ago, prehistoric man, mammals, and more recently, Native Americans roamed the valley, leaving behind clues about their lives. Tusks, bones, and artifacts have all been discovered through the excavation of some flood control projects. These important items are treated with the utmost care and preserved historically. So, what's been discovered?
We have uncovered and restored, recovered, salvaged mammoth tusks, bison teeth, a variety of prehistoric animal fossils. in the North Las Vegas area. And we worked with the State Historic Preservation Office and Bureau of Land Management to salvage and restore those and make them available for public display in an education program. Along the Muddy River in the Logandale and Overton area, we've discovered hearths, fire pits, the remains of prehistoric man camping in that area, or habitating in that area. Along I-15, on the east side of I-15, there are remnants from historic resources, camps when they were building Las Vegas, when they were building Hoover Dam, where people stayed, building the railroad tracks, the Union Pacific line from LA to Salt Lake City went through Las Vegas. Those camps are still, remnants of those camps are still present and might be impacted by our sites.
This is an interesting area. It is actually a natural flood control channel. It's built by Mother Nature. These layers that you see right here were laid, they're sedimentary layers laid over literally hundreds of thousands of years. As early as 12,000 years ago, the Las Vegas Valley was basically a marshland with flowing streams, running rivers, spring mounds that were bubbling up, and it was very wet. It was a very large wetland. And associated with the wetland were these, what we call our charismatic megafauna, like mammoths, American lion, horses, camels, ground sloths, and they occupied this area, and their fossils are embedded in these sedimentary layers. And that's one of the real significant resources out here that we want to protect. There's a very light deposit. You can see that it's white in comparison to kind of the tan area on the wall, and that represents a spring mound. This area had numerous natural artesian springs that welled up from the ground, and they literally burst their way through layers and layers of sediment, and then they spread their material out on the surface. And these are very important. They're fossiliferous throughout. There's a couple of other layers that have very significant fossils in them. Our mission is to manage and protect the health of the landscape, the ecological diversity, and the productivity, the sustainability of our public lands for the benefit of present and future generations.
We found what we call features, like the pit house. Features are evidence of cooking or fire building or storage or living structures, the remains of those. And we also find trash. We find what's left. And the trash generally consists of those things that are preserved, like stone tools. Occasionally in rock shelters we'll find basketry. But one thing archaeologists like to emphasize is if you remove the tools from the context, if you remove the tools, in other words, you find an arrowhead and you remove it from the site, it loses its meaning. If you found all of these tools not associated with the pit house, it wouldn't tell us much about the people living there. So that's what we really study. We're not interested in finding the things. We're interested in finding the story that they can tell us.
Preserving these ancient artifacts is another way that the district and other agencies are protecting Southern Nevada's history. By the way, you can check out that mammoth tusk in the district's lobby. For the Flood Channel, I'm Carrie Ann Mokopathai. Betty, can you dig it?
Thank you, Carrie Ann, for definitely digging deeper. Well, that's going to do it for this special behind-the-scenes edition of the Flood Channel. Remember, we want to hear from you with your questions and comments about the job you've accomplished so far and what we still have left to do. Give us a call, email us, or log on to our website at regionalflood.org. For all of us here at the Flood Channel and those hardworking people behind the scenes, I'm Betty Hollister, and remember to always be flood safe.
And we're clear. Roll credits.